Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special session on championing financing for early childhood development in crisis. We are live here at the debate hall at the Rewired Conference in Dubai. Thanks to all of you who are joining us here in person and to those of you who are joining us as well virtually. We have an exciting conversation here for you. We're going to make the case for why this particular issue is important and why donors, development partners, and everybody around the world should not just make this a priority, but also increase particularly investment, financing for early childhood development, financing in education. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Chernor. I'm co-founder and co-CEO of Purposeful. Purposeful is a feminist organization that is rooted in Africa, and we provide girls and feminist allies with the networks, platforms, and resources to power their own activism. I'm here today with a fantastic panel. First, we have two leaders in this field with us here. Joining me in the room is Anita Anastacio. Anita leads Early Childhood Education in Emergencies Initiative at the Lego Foundation. Also here with us in the room is Jessica Hjarrand. Jessica is Global Program Manager, Early Childhood and Education in Displacement at Porticus. Great to see you both. And we are going to be joined online as well by Rebecca Martinez, who has a pre-recorded message. She is the ECD specialist at USAID. And of course, live joining us from around the world will be Amanda Devercelli, who's the global lead for ECD in the early learning program at the World Bank. Now, before we get started properly, we want to do a live manual Mentimeter in this room. I want to just ask a couple of very quick questions, just gauge the temperature in the room. You know, last night, I'm myself a father, and last night on the phone, I'm on Zoom, on FaceTime with my wife and my 5-month-old baby, and for the first time, little MS says da on the phone, and the mom has been working really hard to make sure that the very first syllables out of his mouth will be mama. So I got that big win. But the question I want to ask for those of us all in the audience is, what percentage of the brain do you think is developed by age 3? Now, I just want you to do a show of hands. If you think it's 50%, B will be if you think it's 98%, and C if you think it's 80%. What percentage of the brain do you think is developed by age 3? Can we do show of hands if you think it's A, 50%? Anybody? Do we think it's B, 98%? Anybody? Thank you, sir, for playing along. All right, 2. And C, how many of us think it's C, 80%? All right, we have a very informed room. Thank you very much. I think C is absolutely the correct answer. But let me ask a follow-up one, and this will be the final one. At what age are the number of brain connections for language acquisition at their highest? The number of brain connections for language acquisition at their highest. A is by age 1, B is by age 3, and C is by age 5. Let's see. How many of us say A? Let's show our hands if A is the answer. All right. How many of us say B by age 3? And how many of us say C by age 5? Well, on this one, I think this is it's a sign of great quiz masters that the audience doesn't get all the questions right. This one, the correct answer would be by age 1. Let me kick off this conversation with you. Anita, tell us a little bit about, I think a lot of people here know that this, coming in here, the Moving Minds Alliance, you came together, you're championing this. Why is it important? Tell us, set the stage for us. Why is ECD in crisis critical, and why did the Moving Minds Alliance come together?
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you for making this session available at Rewired. It's not your typical education session here, so we are really thrilled to have been able to come here and be here in person with many of you, and also have our esteemed speakers online. Really grateful for Dubai Cares and everyone else to be here and to allow us to be in person. It makes such a difference after 2 years of Zoom and webinars. This is perfect. So let me set the scene. Why early childhood development, not just early childhood development in any settings, but early childhood development in crisis settings? I think many of you answered some of the questions correctly. It is the period of the greatest growth, physically and mentally, as well as change in a child's life. It's the greatest opportunity it gives us, and the smartest opportunity it gives us to invest in holistic development in children. Children at that period and it starts long before they're born, but from that period onward, when they are born, it's the first 3 years in a child's life, also the first 3 years of learning how to move, learning how to see, learning how to create connections with the world, and also forming a personal identity and a cultural identity. Those are really important moments and great opportunities for us to invest. They're, like, as we said, by age 1, language acquisition is at its highest percentage, and in terms of what the brain develops and or how the brain develops. So the science is there. The Moving Minds Alliance came together in 2017. It was created by foundations that were really both in the space of child development, education, but also many of them in the space of humanitarian responses. So they funded emergency response, education, and came together realizing that important period in the life of a child was in some ways neglected. And 6 funders came together and decided we need to create a movement if we wanted to change how humanitarian responses are actually responding to the children and the first 3 years, the first 6 years in a child's life. We came together and formed the Moving Minds Alliance and looked at what can we do. We needed to strengthen the practice because there wasn't a lot of interventions or a lot of models that actually worked. We also needed to support creating stronger evidence. At the time in 2017, I think only one rigorous research existed on the powerful interventions in a humanitarian crisis, not in stable settings. And we also needed to sort of form and really influence how others, especially the humanitarian response system, looks at young children. We came together in 2019 at the Global Refugee Forum, expanded our membership by inviting practitioners that are implementing on the ground, researchers, and again, funders coming together and looking at a joint advocacy strategy as well. So that helps us really make the case for early childhood development in crisis setting. And today we are an alliance of more than 20 individuals and organizations, some of the really powerful humanitarian organizations in the field, but not only, we also have local and national organizations that are part of it, and we have researchers and funders coming together. So we are here to make the case with you as well.
Brilliant. And so the Moving Minds Alliance we just had includes a diverse range of actors, traditional and non-traditional donors, individuals, actors. If you're interested in this issue, if you've just had what Amanda has to say about what the evidence is on this issue, the Moving Minds Alliance is a platform for you to get engaged. I want to ask you, Jessica, from Porticus Foundation, when I think of Porticus, that's not really where I'm thinking education, childhood development in crisis. Give us an example of what it is for you, Porticus. What are you doing in this field? How are you showing up? What are you doing specifically in addressing the issues that we just laid out?
Sure, thanks, Chernor. And just to say that, I underscore everything that Anita has said. We were there from the beginning. And just to say a word about what led Porticus to get involved in the Moving Minds Alliance. So we have a commitment to early childhood development for children in adversity. And we also have a commitment to education and displacement. And Moving Minds sits squarely in the middle of those two commitments. And Porticus is also very committed to what we refer to as whole child development, where we put the child and the well-being of the child at the center. And the well-being of a child's development doesn't just start when it enters education. It starts way before that.
Yeah.
In fact, we know that the science tells us it starts a child is prepared for the world it's going to find when it comes out in the womb. So we have to start preparing that child for a positive experience and thinking very holistically about the development. And just finally to say, we're very committed to system change, and we saw within Moving Minds intention a commitment to changing the system for the better and to really thinking about how early childhood contributes to the education spectrum and the development of children once they enter that system. So an example that I would like to share comes from our experience in Bangladesh, where we worked with BRAC IED. So in 2014, Porticus made a grant to BRAC and began working in partnership with them to develop the Play Lab model. And this was being developed not in a humanitarian setting, but in BRAC's centers in Bangladesh for Bangladeshi families. Lego Foundation came in shortly after that, and we ended up co-funding the Play Lab model in the beginning together, especially around the curriculum, especially around the pedagogy. So in 2017, BRAC essentially was asked to run some child-friendly spaces in Cox's Bazar. And they had a model that had been iterated to a certain extent that they were ready to bring in and work with in that request. And while we didn't have rigorous evidence on the effectiveness of that model at that time, we did have monitoring data, and we did have a lot of confidence between the funders and BRAC, and also Lego Foundation had brought in a specialist advisory panel, and they thought as well that the materials, the pedagogy, the curriculum that were being developed had a high likelihood of being of high quality and being effective. So essentially, when the Rohingya crisis started, BRAC had a model that met the needs. They were in the right place at the right time with something that matched what the families needed. And they also had very trusting relationships with two funders and with other actors that were important for the success of this initiative, the government, with other actors in the ECD and education space at the time. And I just feel like it's really important to underscore that it's important to have the evidence of what works, but a big part of how it's going to be successful is having these foundational relationships, because we really believed in the commitment that BRAC had to implement this model with quality. And there was also a strong commitment between the funders, not only with BRAC too.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing that example. And again, I hope that those of you who are following are thinking about the different ways you can get involved into this specific space, early childhood development in crisis. And I think the point of these concrete examples is to let you all see what opportunities are, and as you said, that it's about building an ecosystem and working together. I want to come back to you, Anita, because I think you just laid the foundation really well and making the case for the Moving Minds Alliance. But let's talk about Lego Foundation. You've not been in the humanitarian space for long. So what made you decide that this issue, particularly ECD, in crisis, is your entry point or is important for you?
Yeah, thank you. Again, I think as the Lego Foundation, as Jessica mentioned, we had funded early childhood programs in, let's call it, stable settings for children with adverse experiences. At the same time, in 2017, we also learned of this MacArthur very famous call giving away $100 million for problems that haven't been solved. And the finalist made the case really well that we needed to invest, and the smarter investments and the solutions lie in early childhood. So MacArthur in 2018 or 17, I can't remember exactly, funded Sesame Workshop and the International Rescue Committee $100 million to respond to young children's development in the Syrian conflict. So we are looking at Lebanon, Jordan, refugees that have been there for a long time, Iraq, and also within Syria. In addition, MacArthur didn't stop there. They became a member of the Moving Minds Alliance and rallied the funders to also follow on from, because 100 million is like a drop in the crisis settings. So they came in and also called upon others to join forces. The Lego Foundation was at a point of having funded early childhood development programs, but really was a new player in the humanitarian field. But we responded to that call, and our board and our leadership was ready to say we need to follow that. It's the best investment we can make. There's research out there that the science of brain development is so powerful, we needed to invest. We also had models like Jessica mentioned, play labs in Bangladesh. So we followed on with a $100 million investment to do three things: respond and reach children at the age, but respond in ways and learn what could work in those settings, whether it's Rohingya communities or it's Syrian refugees. We also felt we needed to invest largely into creating the evidence, because policymakers need to know what works, right? So, and we want to use that and want our partners to use it to make the case for more. So our third objective was also influence others. So with our partners and working with the Moving Minds Alliance, we felt that was a great investment to sort of follow on the MacArthur case, raise the issue with $200 million investments, but not stop there, but continue to influence.
Thank you so much, Anita. I think you just hit the nail on the head. This is the best investment that you can possibly make. My personal experience, I grew up as a refugee. I was in these difficult settings. And as you said, early childhood, these are most important periods in your life. And when you are, as we were as kids, in an incredibly tough circumstance, this is when you need the right set of investments and you will have the biggest rewards. So it's really important that you are not only doing it, but also, as you say, finding the evidence and bringing other people on board. Again, I think finding different people. So speaking of bringing other folks on board, we have Porticus here, we have Lego Foundation here, but you're not the only players, especially in the Moving Minds Alliance. We also have major government actors like USAID. And so I'm really delighted right now to introduce and bring to you all Rebecca Martinez, who is an senior education advisor at USAID, to talk about USAID's perspective on this issue and what they're doing and why they think this is important. So let's listen to Rebecca right now. I think we have a video of our intervention. Okay. I think we're not quite ready yet. Oh, here we go. She is right there. Apologies for that. Please go on.
Greetings. It's my pleasure to be speaking today on behalf of USAID and to join my colleagues on this panel highlighting the critical importance of supporting young children in contexts of crisis and conflict. USAID recognizes the critical role that the first years of a child's life have on their future and currently invests in early childhood through a number of initiatives across different sectors, including health, nutrition, child protection, and education. This support was bolstered by policy with the passing of the 2021 Global Child Thrive Act, which directs U.S. government agencies, including USAID, to incorporate and promote early childhood development programs across a range of relevant sectors. The Thrive Act builds on the evidence and priorities outlined in the U.S. government strategy advancing protection and care for children in adversity, which includes a commitment to build strong beginnings and invest in early childhood development. We know a critical component of improving early childhood outcomes is supporting caregivers to provide nurturing and responsive care and to help them create opportunities for early learning. Examples of successful initiatives for parents and caregivers include programs in Rwanda, Uganda, and Senegal, where USAID funded the Responsible, Engaged, and Loving Fathers Initiative, which builds young fathers' relationships with their children through positive and nonviolent engagement. Another key area of focus is on pre-primary programs. Our 2018 USAID education policy highlighted the importance of early learning opportunities. Like our foundational skills efforts, USAID missions pre-primary work will focus on learning outcomes. Since the release of the policy, USAID developed several technical products, including a how-to and literature review to support USAID missions in designing and implementing high-quality pre-primary activities. Additionally, there are several ongoing pre-primary programs in the field, including Zambia's Let's Read activity and Rwanda's School and Systems program. In Haiti, the Strong Beginnings activity leverages the home, school, and church to develop children's early literacy and social emotional skills from ages 3 to 6. As we move forward in the sector, we are also conducting research to fill the void on evidence-based best practices for implementing high-quality pre-primary in lower and middle-income contexts. USAID is committed to prioritizing equity and inclusion in the pre-primary space and is currently developing technical products focused on integrating the principles of universal design for learning to pre-primary instruction. The agency also recognizes the critical nature of social and emotional learning skills, not only for learners, but also for teachers and early childhood professionals. Social and emotional skills are highlighted as a key component of school readiness in our guidance document, and USAID's how-to note on integrating SEL into basic education programming includes pre-primary within its scope. We also have sought out ways to work with other key donors and stakeholders in the early childhood space. For example, our partnership with the LEGO Foundation focuses on advocating for learning through play in the sector and collaboration at the country level. As part of the COVID-19 response, LEGO and USAID made joint contributions and provided technical expertise to Education Cannot Wait and the International Network for Education in Emergencies. Finally, it's important to note that investments in early childhood are not limited to USAID, but can be found across U.S. government agencies. USAID continues to lead coordination of the USG International Basic Education Strategy, which focuses on early childhood development in 2 key areas: nutrition and health programs and preschool and pre-primary. Key partners in this area include USDA, which is focused on complementary school feeding, and the U.S. Department of Education, which provides research and evidence on best practices. Recognizing the importance and the great need that remains in the sector, USAID is keen to continue working with and learning from other leaders in this field, and to encourage and support collaboration between partners on the ground to meet the needs of young children, regardless of their circumstances. Thank you.
Yes, we can put our hands together for her, because I think if you care about this issue, as we do, you'll be excited to hear that you have the commitment of USAID at this level and the kinds of collaboration that Rebecca just spoke about. Speaking of collaboration, Jessica, I know that one of the programs you're really excited and passionate about is the Strong Beginnings program from Haiti. Can you maybe speak a little bit about that collaboration and why you think that's an important example of the power of this conversation?
Yes, I'm happy to. And you're right. My colleagues that are managing the Strong Beginnings program are just amazing. It's a fantastic program, and Rebecca mentioned it in her intervention just there. So I can say a few words about how we sort of gave birth to the Strong Beginnings program, if you will. So in 2019, Porticus commissioned the second evaluation of an early literacy program that had been implemented for the previous 5 years, which Rebecca also mentioned, and it was focusing on early literacy in Haitian Creole and French. And what we found in the 2019 evaluation through teacher observations, through parent focus groups, was that the baseline starting point of many of the children who were coming into that early literacy program was very low. We were seeing impact of the intervention, but the starting point was just so low that it was going to take a very long time to get to the area of the outcomes that we wanted, the impact that we wanted to see. And there was a realization that there were many gaps in quality early childhood at home, in pre-primary programming, and also that families were facing significant barriers that had nothing to do with education, poor nutrition, inability to access basic services like health, employment. And Haiti is a very mixed context. There's been a number of crises I'm sure everybody has seen throughout the last 10 years, including very recently as well. So the Strong Beginnings program aimed to add an early childhood component onto what was originally an education early literacy program intervention. And it includes support for teachers, parents, caregivers, and church leaders. And it also created something called the L3 Learning Lab, which is funded by actually the consortium of USAID, Porticus, and another foundation, the Kellogg Foundation. So there is this funder consortium active there. And in addition to creating materials, doing pre-primary teacher training on early literacy, on socio-emotional learning skill development, and responsive caregiving, the Learning Lab is also a space to help the local community identify solutions based on what they are doing. And this is very much led by the church leadership, which was identified as a significant influence, but also a source of support for many families in Haiti, in the communities where this program is aiming to see impact. So this Learning Lab is really helping them identify what's working, helping to identify and empower leaders in those communities, because after all of us leave, they're still going to be there, and they already have good practices that are working for them, and we really wanted to be able to build and empower them to continue on with that. The baptismal ceremony in many churches was identified as, for example, a place where quality early childhood could be provided by church leaders to parents and in other ways too. So just to say that, but I just really want to emphasize that again, coming back to the how, what do we do going forward? What we've learned is that it's important for those of us who are implementing education programs to have an evaluation, and to have an evaluation that might look backwards, but also in the present moment too, at what's happening in the early childhood space. What happened before children entered pre-primary, and what is happening, what support might be needed to families and to other influences, other areas of a child's life where early childhood could be embedded. And also, again, coming back to this need to really create, invest in, funder spaces. As I mentioned with the partnership with Lego in Bangladesh, and now with the Haiti example, Porticus's role has been to generate the idea, to iterate, to get the foundation set, so a funder like the Lego Foundation can come in with more resources and scale significantly the model that was built. And the same thing happened in Haiti with USAID. So these funder ecosystems where we all bring our strengths, where we all work very closely together, are really a key part of how we can see success in this area.
Thank you, Jessica. I really like your clarity every time you speak about this issue, both on the program in Haiti, about how it came together and the fact that it acknowledges that ECD is not entirely a new imposition in these communities. These cultures used to have different kinds of values about harnessing all of those things and then documenting it, both backwards and looking forward. So I really like that and your emphasis on ecosystems. I'm going to come back to you, Anita, but I think it's time for us to bring in Amanda, who's joining us live from Somalia, I believe. Thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. I hope you can hear me. You're from the bank, and one of the things I really excited by is the fact that in the past few years, the bank has been one of the institutions that's actually significantly increased its funding for ECD in crisis, the percentage of its funding in this space. I don't know if Amanda can hear me, but I want you to speak about why this issue is important for you at the World Bank and examples of your interventions on early childhood development in crisis.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm not in. Sorry, it sounds like there's a big echo in that room. But can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Please go on.
Okay, I'll just keep talking. Yeah, I'm joining you from Kenya today. I wasn't able to go to Somalia, but I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. So it's been great to hear from the other partners today. And we absolutely agree that investing in early childhood development in fragile and conflict-affected settings is critical. We know it's a critical window to invest in children. We have something at the World Bank called the Human Capital Index. And what the Human Capital Index does is it measures future potential productivity based on health and education outcomes in countries. And if you look at the Human Capital Index for countries that are affected by conflict and violence, it's 0.41. That means that a child growing up today, on average, in a context affected by conflict and violence, will only be 41% as productive as they could be when they grow up if they had access to complete education and full health and the kind of holistic early childhood development opportunities we're talking about. That is tragic, and we have to intervene and act now to change that and change those outcomes for those children and for countries. And holistic investments in early childhood are critical to do that. At the World Bank, we are pleased to be partnering with Moving Minds Alliance on this effort, thinking about holistic interventions to improve child development and really acting as a bridge between emergency relief and longer-term development efforts. I'll give you just a few examples of some of the work we're doing in a few countries, and then I'll talk to you briefly about how we're shifting our work and what we're hoping to do in the future. So if you look back at the last year of work for which we have data, which is 2020, we committed $1.8 billion to early childhood development activities in countries affected by crisis and violence. And that the World Bank finance always responds to demand from governments. So that reflects increasing demand from governments and countries to invest in this space, and we expect that to continue. I think that our challenge now is less about why to invest and more about how to invest. Certainly, there is still some work to be done in convincing for the why, but thankfully, I think we've made progress on that front globally, thanks to many of the partners in the room with you today. And we now need to be showing evidence of how these investments work and how they have impact. And I know Jessica and Anita have both spoken about this. So to give you a few examples of a few things we're doing. In Jordan, we're working with the government of Jordan to enroll 30,000 refugee children in preschools, but not just to focus on enrollment and access, but also to focus on quality, to make sure these children are enrolled in programs that are high quality, play-based programs with teachers who have received good training. We're also working on building disaster resilient schools for the future, right? Knowing that there will be, unfortunately, more climate risks, more political risks. So in a number of countries, we're working on building disaster resilient schools and safer schools for young children. We're also delivering targeted psychosocial support for children living in recently liberated areas in a number of countries to help mitigate the mental health impacts of conflict. often in many countries combining multi-sectoral interventions. So combining access to early learning services with cash transfers for families that incentivize families to invest in their children's education and health and nutrition. We think that the kind of multi-year funding, cross-sectoral funding that we can help provide, working with governments and with other partners, is essential to really taking a systems approach and a holistic approach to improving child development. So just to close, I want to talk about our new partnership with Moving Minds Alliance. With our partnership with Moving Minds Alliance, we'll be focusing on 3 buckets of work. The first bucket of work is catalytic country grants. What this means is that World Bank teams working with governments in settings where conflict and violence are present are able to apply for funding, relatively small grants, anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000, to do the work they think is most critical to move forward early childhood development in that context. So it could mean piloting and evaluating a new approach. It could mean developing a new curriculum or teacher training program. It could mean some upstream analytical work to help make the case for why or how to invest in early childhood in these settings. We've seen that approach in our early childhood development work globally be incredibly effective. Through country grants over the last 5 years, our program, the Early Learning Partnership, has invested about $15 million in these kinds of country grants, and that's returned more than $2 billion in new and improved finance for early childhood development globally. So we think if we can have that kind of an impact in crisis and humanitarian settings, that there's strong potential there. So that's the first bucket, catalytic country grants. The second is high value analytical work. There we're looking at better measures to measure children's development in these contexts, better work on evaluating the impact of interventions in these contexts, but also developing tools and public goods and things that other partners can use to ensure the quality of programming and monitoring and improving quality moving forward. And then our final bucket, our third bucket, is around capacity building. We know that building capacity is really important in this space, and we have 2 programs that we're very excited about. The first is called the Early Years Fellowship, which hires young professionals to work in their home countries on early childhood development for 2 years with the World Bank and with their government, while also enrolled in a professional development program that builds their capacity and connects them with some of the best and the brightest mentors in the field of early childhood development around the world. We've had 2 cohorts of fellows so far, and we'll be introducing a 3rd cohort in 2022. And they've been having incredible impacts working with their country governments, with partners, and with the World Bank to build new and improved investments in early childhood. And it will be great to have them working specifically in context of humanitarian settings. And then we also have a program working with policymakers, where countries enroll in the program for a 2-year virtual and face-to-face learning program, working with the World Bank and with external experts on the topics they think are most important to move forward the early childhood development agenda in their country. They set goals for their country and then they work towards them. And we have 15 countries enrolled so far, and in our next cohort, we will focus on enrolling countries who are experiencing fragility or violence or working in this humanitarian context. So we're really pleased to be moving forward with this new scope of work with the Moving Minds Alliance. This is a critical issue for building countries' human capital and for children's future development, and we're pleased to be a part of it. Thanks for having me today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, please. Thank you so much. And thanks to the bank for your leadership as well and your personal passion and drive of this really critical issue. Now, we have the Moving Minds Alliance has put together a call to action video. I want to call your attention to the screens to take a quick look. It's just a 3-minute video for us to look, and then we'll wrap this session up. Thank you.
Did you know that 80% of the human brain develops in the first 3 years of a child's life? That's right, brain development and learning. In those first 3 years, the brain develops faster than any other time in life. 1 million neural connections form every second. This process sets the foundations and determines a person's health, well-being, learning, and behavior over their entire lifetime. What matters most to early brain development is what the child experiences in these early moments. It is the environment around the child and the interactions with the people caring for them that are critical. For the millions of children growing up in crisis settings, the conditions that would enable them to grow up happy and healthy are often lacking. Their parents or caregivers may be struggling with their own well-being due to the everyday challenges that come with being away from home. The surroundings children grow up in also often provide very few opportunities to explore and play. But there is good news. Proven solutions exist and are already reaching families in Bangladesh, Jordan, and Haiti, to name just a few places. These programs show that what children need can also be provided in fragile settings. These are cost-effective solutions that can be integrated into all kinds of services that reach young children, like health, protection, nutrition, education services, and really amplify their impact. Together, we can make sure all children growing up in difficult circumstances have access to services that will help them heal, learn, and reach their potential. But again, we have to be smart and start early because learning begins at birth. Only 3.3% of international development funding and 2% of humanitarian aid is reaching the youngest children and their families. Not investing more in completing the care we provide to young children would be a missed opportunity. We all hold a piece of the puzzle. So what part can you play? Let's join up to support the development and well-being of young children caught up in crisis and make life better today, tomorrow, and for generations to come.
Thank you very much for that video. Yes, we can applaud. I do appreciate this audience. I like an audience that affirms. And this is, as we know, we're talking about early childhood development. Children appreciate that as well. What can we do? What piece of the puzzle do you have, and how can we all come together and join our hands? We only have 2 minutes to go. I'm going to first call on Education Cannot Wait to really quickly say what you're going to continue to do on this issue. It's on, I guess.
It's on?
Yes.
I'll stand up. First of all, thank you very much for inviting Education Cannot Wait to say a few words. And I would like to thank one of our most important private sector partners, Lego, and my friend Anita. Why is Education Cannot Wait investing in early childhood education? We have made a commitment. 10% ECD in all our investments, and we invest in 33 crisis, conflict, refugee-affected countries. Minimum of 10%. Why is it important? We saw it on the video. The child's brain is developed during those early years, and if you don't get it right then, no education that comes subsequently will be utilized and optimized the way it should have been. So for Education Cannot Wait, early childhood development stands at a minimum of 10%. And thanks to our great partnership with the Lego Group and Anita being here to represent them, we are able to deliver on that commitment. And by the way, nothing is more conducive to a child in their early years, so early childhood development, than Lego. I grew up with Lego, and that's why ECW is a success.
Thank you very much. Even though you're from...
And also, let me thank Porticus. We have another private sector partner also doing early childhood development.
Oh, we have another...
I cannot forget Porticus, who is also a critical partner to us. It's thanks to you that we are succeeding in helping the children in crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank
to
you,
Education Cannot Wait. Go ahead, sir. We don't have any more time.
GP is very committed to early childhood education. Again, we also appreciate the support from Lego. But in 2020, we put in half of our grants provided support for early childhood education. And then this represents about 7% of GP's financing, or a total of $158 million in that 1 year. 42% of our grants that year went to fragile and conflict-affected states. And this is, of course, a great, complements the great work of ECW in those same regions. So thank you.
Thank you so much to GP for your leadership. And I just want to say it's time for us to bring this down. I want to thank Anita, Jessica, Amanda, and Rebecca who all joined us, and members of the Moving Minds Alliance, and all of you who've been a fantastic audience for us. I hope you all find ways to get involved on this issue. It's absolutely critical. The time is now. We have the momentum, and we have an alliance that can be a platform for you to direct your intervention. So go check out the Moving Minds Alliance and be part of this journey. Thanks for joining us today.